see some of you that were on our last webinar. This is our two-part series focused on heirs property. My name is Masika Henson. I'm the program strategist consultant with SAFSF. I am located on Chochenyo Ohlone land in what is now known as Oakland, California. And Oakland, as some of you might know, is named Oakland because there were a lot of oak trees here at one time. We still have some. But my favorite tree is actually not the oak tree, it's the redwood. So, which is what you see behind me right now. I love redwoods, and those are also very plentiful in this area. I want to thank our speakers today from the Mississippi Center for Justice, the Mississippi Association of Cooperatives, the Limited Resources Landowner Education Assistance Network, Legal Services Alabama, the Center for Heirs Property, aka CHIP, and Winston County Self-Help Cooperative. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We're looking forward to hearing from you. I also want to remind people to share questions you have in the chat. If you have them as they come to you, you can put them in the chat. We'll have some time for Q&A towards the end. Probably have about 20 minutes for that. So just, really looking forward to having like a nice conversation as we hear our speakers talk. They'll be in conversation, and then, as questions come up, let's talk them through. So do my intro to SAFSF for those of you that don't know SAFSF, the Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems Funders, um, aims to foster collaboration among a full spectrum of funders, field leaders, and practitioners across the United States, all to advance a shared mission for equitable and sustainable food and agriculture. So, as some of you know, this June, we're going to host our annual forum in Savannah, Georgia. Savannah is a place that, we really think is unique because it's where water meets land, where Afro-Indigenous and Gullah Geechee stewardship meets Southern agrarian futures, and where today's climate crisis meets both rural disinvestment and also new opportunity. So while funder learning is the central goal for the event, nonprofit movement leaders and food system partners are integral to the success of the event because they bring the on-the-ground wisdom and solutions. So we're all facing this moment right now of chaos, and some might call profound transformation. I mean, hopefully that's what it is, profound in a good way, across the food system and society in general. The forum is going to be a place for people to come together and make sense of what's happening, talk about solutions, come up with solutions, and also be in solidarity. So in many ways, we know the South is a fulcrum of the American food and agricultural system, and we recognize that community-led solutions from the region can offer models for the country and for the world. So as I shared last time, and I'll share it again for those who weren't with us, this year's theme is Ancestral Futures. So throughout that forum event, we're going to address what a food future that embraces ancestral traditions could look like. We really want to lean into that. We want to come together and think about what we want to see for the future as we're seeing our system being dismantled. So last week we had part one of the webinar series. Our speakers leaned into their shared experiences and the shared challenges, but they also highlighted the importance of partnerships and the power that's in the collective. So today we're here for part two. We'll continue to embrace our ancestral futures. So to get us started, I'd like to welcome the CEO of the Center for Heirs Property, aka CHIP, Dr. Jenny L. Stevens. Jenny has led CHIP since its inception in 2005, focusing on helping families protect and keep their family land, build generational wealth, and grow working landscapes. She's worked for more than 25 years in the nonprofit field in positions such as fiscal director at a community action agency, sponsored programs director at a historically Black college, and senior program director at Coastal Community Foundation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, Dr. Stevens, who will introduce our speakers, kind of give us also a little bit of a review of what we talked about last time and get us set up for this conversation. So Jenny, passing it over to you.
Thank you, Masika. And good afternoon to everyone. And want to say thank you to SAFSF for the opportunity to moderate part two of this important conversation. In part one, we talked about how the Mobile Basin Heirs Property Initiative came together through a convergence of efforts. Each partner was already walking its own path and working on different aspects of this issue. Corporate partners like WWF and Kimberly Clark were focused on long term forest sustainability, biodiversity, and responsible fiber sourcing. Through that work, they recognized that heirs property could severely hamper those goals. So you may be wondering, what is heirs property and what does it have to do with forestry? That might be those questions that are running around in your mind. Southern forests are often described as the wood basket of the nation, generating more than 55% of the timber harvested in the US. Forests in the Mobile Basin help filter drinking water, support watersheds, sustain rural economies, and provide family wealth building opportunity. But forest management, or for, excuse me, forest fragmentation is one of the greatest threats to this region. And when families lack clear title because of heirs property, they are often unable to fully access forest management, conservation, agricultural, and other land use opportunities. At the same time, CHIP was considering how to expand its model beyond South Carolina. CHIP's approach recognizes that families are working to protect both their homes and their land, and that long-term stability requires addressing both together. Our goal is to help families remain rooted in their homes, on their land, and in their legacy. CHIP's model is built around five pillars: protecting land and legacy, securing ownership rights, growing working lands, strengthening communities, and expanding our impact. In practice, that means helping families prevent heirs property before it happens, resolving title when ownership is unclear, using land as a sustainable asset, building stronger community networks, and scaling the work through implementation partners across East Texas, the South, and Appalachia. We also see this work as part of a broader heirs property field, including the National Heirs Property Alliance's leadership and national policy, advocacy, and field coordination. All the while, the Mississippi Center for Justice was bringing years of experience providing legal services and working with landowners and communities. They had seen, especially after natural disasters, how families without clear title could be blocked from accessing recovery funds and rebuilding resources. MCJ wanted to deepen its heirs property work and build capacity in a way that they learned from what already existed rather than recreating the wheel. That is where CHIP's model and this broader partnership became so important. What became clear was that we were all trying to solve different parts of the same problem. That is the power of partnership. When corporate, nonprofit, legal, land use, and community based organizations bring their different strengths to the table, we can put together the pieces in a way that no single organization could do alone. Part one focused on how this foundation was built. Today, in part two, you will hear what this work looks like in practice, how partners are working with landowners, how referrals happen, how legal and land use services connect, and how this coordinated model functions day to day. You will also hear why land ownership in this region has to be understood through the lens of forestry, agriculture, rural economies, family legacy, and access to resources that help families keep land productive. With that, I will ask each of the panelists to briefly share their name, their title, organization, and the role your organization plays in the community. I guess I should select somebody first. So I'll start with Duran.
Thank you for that, Jenny. I appreciate it. My name is Duran Lacey, and I am the executive director of the Limited Resource Landowner Education and Assistance Network in Fayette County, Alabama. We serve essentially all 67 counties in the state of Alabama with a focus in the Black Belt area of the state of Alabama. And basically, what we do, or what we have tried to do for landowners, is offer stewardship, counsel, writing management plans, and essentially helping landowners make wise decisions with their forested property in the state. Usually, those landowners with 300 acres or less.
Okay. Thank you, Duran. T.
So Jen, I'm going to fill in briefly here for T.
Okay, sure.
I am Frank Taylor, and I am the team leader for the Winston County Self-Help Cooperative, and we're based in Eastern Mississippi. This organization has been functioning since 1985. So our basic role in the community that we serve, and that's broadly, is to provide them with technical services in terms of anything that's needed for these individuals to sustain their natural resources. But for forestry, in terms of management plans, same as Duran. But the spirit of it is to help these people to be functional and manage their natural resources by working collectively with other organizations that serve in numerous capacities.
Thank you, Frank. Farah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Farah Majid, and I'm the Assistant Director of Advocacy at Legal Services Alabama. We're a statewide nonprofit law firm. We provide free civil legal aid to low-income residents throughout the state of Alabama. We cover the whole state of Alabama. In my role, I supervise our Heir Property team. So we currently have 2 attorneys and 2 paralegals, and we represent landowners. We try to clear title to heirs property when we can. And we try to encourage families and landowners to monetize their property when they can. So I'm happy to be here with you all today.
Thank you. Freddie.
It help if I unmute. My name is Freddie Davis. I'm the director of Rural Training Research Center, owned by the members of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. I'm serving in the capacity as a assistant forester for Mississippi Association of Cooperatives. Mississippi Association of Cooperatives has been working with landowners um, in Mississippi for 54 years with the mission of assisting those landowners with retaining land and forming cooperatives to assist with the efforts around marketing and purchasing of goods and services.
Thank you, Freddie. And last but not least, Andrea.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm attorney Andrea Barnes, and I serve as the director of the Heirs Property Campaign with the Mississippi Center for Justice, also known as MCJ. We're located here in Jackson, Mississippi, and we serve all 82 counties in our state. The Mississippi Center for Justice is a homegrown public interest law firm that is committed to advancing racial and economic justice through a comprehensive approach that combines legal services, policy advocacy, community education, and media outreach. In reference to the work that the Heirs Property Campaign does here in Mississippi, we provide free direct legal assistance to underserved and low-wealth Mississippians, inclusive of outreach and education, direct legal services where we go into court and file actions for landowners. And then we also assist landowners with the prevention of the creation of heirs property through mobile wills clinics. Of course, I'm honored to be a part of our discussion on today.
Andrea, don't mute yourself because I'm going to ask you the first question.
All right.
So you're going to help us get started. Could you
Okay.
please give a brief explanation of what heirs property is?
Okay. Well, thank you, Jenny. And of course, thank you and Chip for your trusted partnership. And I always have to say thank SAFSF for again hosting our webinar today. Now, growing up, I never heard the term heirs property. I always heard the elders talking about family land. So in our discussion today, when we think about heirs property, we know that heirs property is sometimes referred to or known as family land or tangled title. But heirs property is created when a person dies without a will, or the original owner of property has died with a will that has not been probated, where the family has not gone to court to get that will declared as the last will and testament of the deceased original owner. So when a family member fails to plan, i.e., dies without a will, state law is going to determine who has a right to inherit the property. So when we talk about heirs property, the $1,000,000 question becomes, who has a right to inherit mom's house or dad's house, or as I affectionately call my great grandparents, Big Mama or Big Papa, right? Who has a right to inherit from our ancestors, the people that we love? Now, in reference to heirs property, when we think about the land, when the family actually fails to take the estate or the property to probate court to settle the title, when we talk about heirs property, that land then just passes informally from generation to generation. So, of course, in Mississippi, that property is going to remain in the name of the original deceased owner until direct legal action is filed. When we talk about heirs property, one of the things I think that is critical to know about heirs property and its definition is that the land is owned in common by all heirs. And so all heirs own an undivided interest in the land rather than each heir owning an individual lot or piece of the land. Because you have multiple owners with heirs property without clear title, this, of course, leads to many challenges. Those who own heirs property face significant barriers to making full use of the land. So not having clear title limits access to governmental programs like the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or loans that are actually designed to assist landowners with managing, sustaining, and or monetizing the land by engaging in commercial activity to build wealth from the land, such as selling timber or other resources. Lastly, I think what I'll say in terms of heirs property to provide context for our discussion today is it's also difficult to borrow money to repair, right? So when disaster strikes, it's difficult to repair or rebuild. And sometimes in many instances, we've had clients that they've been unable to obtain homeowners insurance, right? So heirs property is vulnerable to land loss. And of course this vulnerability leads to instability in our community, right? Because it's subject to foreclosure, whether that's a mortgage foreclosure or even tax sale delinquency. So in terms of heirs property, when we fail to plan, state law is going to tell us who has a right to inherit from us.
It will indeed. Thank you, Andrea. Frank, you're up next. So why, from your landowner's perspective, why is it important to address the issue of heirs property with the landowners that you are serving?
Well, but personally, I have a story that reflects what Andrea said. I was introduced to heirs property in 1974 when my maternal grandfather died. He died without a will. Then his brother, his half brother, was forced into a petition sale because him and the stepmother could not collectively come to a decision. And then I had a great uncle who had financial issues and he lost 113 acres. So what do they have property look like? That's what it looks like. But the success of that was my maternal grandfather. We were able to preserve the family land. So that's the moral for me in this work that we do. And that's our commitment, is to help individuals who may be vulnerable to heirs property. What do? We work in conjunction with others to provide them with education, how not to end up losing their property because of family issues. So it's a continuous education process, knowing the individual and constantly having conversation and helping people determine a map going forward. What do we do as long as we have heirs property? What can we do to continue to make money? And ultimately, in the end, is to be able to subdivide it into each individual plot.
Thank you, Frank, for sharing your personal story and that we have options. So, Freddie and Duran, we've heard from Frank. So, how has Heirs Property impacted your landowners?
I think, thanks, Duran. I think that one of the things that's key is in the U.S., in the South, Alabama, Mississippi, particularly, is that ownership of land is supported by some type of an agriculture endeavor, and agriculture is supported heavily by government programming. And without access, without clear title, it is hard to access those that support from USDA. So, just 2020, 2021, 40% of US farms were supported by government subsidies. And without that access, land ownership is really difficult in the areas that we're working in. So that alone, that access to that assistance is critical. And without clear title, that's increasingly hard for landowners to access.
Thank you, Freddie. Duran?
I'll pair a lot of what everyone else said as far as it makes it more difficult for landowners to participate in the programs that were meant to help landowners. L.R. Lean did this work for over a decade, working with landowners with clear title, right? And those landowners with clear title struggled. So you can only imagine the difficulty
Right.
that comes in when you start working with heirs property landowners. I mean, you have delays as far as being able to, harvest your timber. You have delays as far as being able to plant the timber. A lot of the vendors who perform this work for landowners, they prefer to work with landowners with clear title. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it shuts a lot of landowners out. Since we're in the business of trying to help landowners to be successful with their stewardship practices, we had to address land heirs property ownership as well.
Okay. Sometimes it's thrust upon you. You don't have a choice. If you really want to fulfill your mission,
Right.
you've got to deal with this, what can be a difficult conversation for families. So, thank you guys. Earlier, I said that the South is the wood basket of the nation. That matters here because forestry and forest products contribute significantly to each state's economy. About 15.4 billion in Mississippi and more than 36.3 billion in Alabama. So when heirs property limits a family's ability to manage, conserve, or generate income from their land, it affects more than one family. It affects rural economies, working forests, and the broader community. So, Freddie, can you help me or help us connect the dots? Why is forestry so central to land ownership in this region, and why does clear title matter to families who want to use their land productively?
Yeah, just to kind of put the numbers that you just mentioned into context, the in Mississippi, forestry is the number two commodity. And in Alabama, forestry is number one industry in the state. So for the management of forests and access to markets in those two states are critical for land ownership. And and the reason that land ownership is important is because the land ownership gives you control. So with control comes access to food, food sovereignty, housing. You've got to have somewhere to put your house. Um, Recreation. And we understand more and more post COVID how important access to land and recreation is when it comes to addressing mental health. So with all of that, land ownership creates your ability to generate wealth in Mississippi and Alabama. However you define wealth, that access to land is that avenue for wealth creation, and by market, forestry is one of the vehicles, is one of the most important vehicles to that's guiding land ownership.
Land is usually the major asset that anybody has, right? And so when literally it's under lock and key and you can't use it, then that prevents, as you said earlier, just the ability of the family to make decisions and to actually maximize the use of the land. And so, having said that, Farah, can you tell us how has expanding LSA's work to heirs property? What has it meant for LSA in terms of the geographies and the communities in which you are now working?
Yeah, thanks so much, Jenny. Yeah, the population of Alabama is obviously very rural, and obviously there's lots of minorities that live here. LSA, we're a civil legal aid provider, so we've always represented low income clients, and we had historically done heirs property work, but we've been able to really expand in recent years through grants from the Center for Heirs Property and a couple of other grants. This work is extremely important in Alabama for the population that we serve. Alabama includes the Black Belt, which some of you may be familiar with, but I did want to note that it's called the Black Belt not because there's a high population of Black Americans living there, but because of the soil. The soil itself is black in color, so that's actually why it's called that. So although we certainly do uplift minority landowners, of course we provide our services regardless of any racial qualifications. That being said, heirs property certainly disproportionately affects, of course, low-income Alabamians, rural Alabamians, and minorities as well. And it's one of the ways being able to hold on to land is one of the ways for all of those groups to hold on to generational wealth, which is why this work is so important. So through the grants that we've received, we have been able to hire additional staff that focus solely on heirs property. So at its peak, we were able to hire 3 attorneys and 2 paralegals who served the entire state, directly representing families trying to clear title for a lot of the challenges we've talked about already on today's call. And we've been able to do really great work through that. So it's certainly helped us advance our mission of helping low-income families pull themselves out of poverty. Because like I said, this is such an important issue that really affects folks, and this is a way for them to try to hold on to and build generational wealth.
Law is a tool. That's what we're doing here. We're using law as a tool. But I just want to ask you one more question, Farah, before I go to Andrea. So you get ready, Andrea. I'm coming your way. So, Farah, were there any new skills or knowledge that your lawyers had to develop to do this new deliver this new portfolio of work?
Yeah, absolutely. So Alabama is fortunate. Not all states have this, but there's a document called an heirship affidavit, which is a relatively straightforward legal document. You essentially get a disinterested third party, so not a family member, who knew the person whose name the property is in. So you find out first whose name the property was in. And through that affidavit of heirship, we're able to at least list who all the heirs are. And it is a path to clear title. It doesn't in and of itself clear title, but it does allow them to do things like get insurance. It can be recorded. It's just a legal document that proves who all has an ownership interest. And that's something that I, as the supervisor of the team, didn't know existed before we started doing this work. So our attorneys have certainly gained skills in doing quiet title actions, partition actions. We do some litigation, not a whole lot. And then, of course, we're in probate court as well. So yeah, we've certainly had to gain some skills. But like I said, because we have that process, that's what we do a lot of to try to help folks move towards clearing title. And then once we've identified all the heirs, we also have a process of getting quitclaim deeds and things to try to consolidate title into as few people as possible, ideally maybe one person. But that, of course, makes it easier just in terms of decision making and the family being able to do things with the land. So that's always our goal.
Thank you. sometimes at SHIP, I call our attorneys the family whisperers. And so heirs property is about law, but the largest component is about family. And I get along with all of my family members. I don't know about y'all, but I'm just talking about me. I get along with all of them. And so we know that is a challenge, right? So, Andrea, for the most part, well, no, actually, MCJ is varied, so I won't say that. But tell us, what additional partnerships has MCJ developed because of, just to expand your heirs property portfolio and reach more landowners?
Okay. Well, thank you, Jenny. One of the things that we learned really early on was the power of the collective and how connecting and partnerships was very critical to, I think, to be able to expand the work and do the work. Because it's what we also learned too is this space was very protected, right? So you had people already working in the space. And so we were trying to create a seat at the table, but people needed to understand or feel comfortable with MCJ being in the room and having that seat. And so we had to build relationships. We had to build infrastructure. We had to connect. We had to build those networks. And so one of the things that we did is we began to have those listening sessions, those focus groups, right? To connect with people who were already doing the work. And so what that looked like, that may have been academia, people with 1890, right? Who were doing the outreach and education. That may have been elected officials like mayors or tax assessors or chancery clerks, chancery judges, or judges. That may have been people in title industry, the finance industry, right? All the people who are boots on the ground, so to speak, who are working in the community, working with people who have heirs property, or they may people in ag, right? And that's our community partners and organizations like the Winston County Self-Help Cooperative, or like the Mississippi Association of Cooperative, or like the Mississippi Minority Farms Alliance, like all the people who are helping landowners already in ag. And it was an opportunity when connecting with these trusted individuals already working to not only share that we are here right now in this space, wanting to also be a part of the solution to landowners with helping them unlock the wealth that is in the land, but also it allowed us to really talk through what challenges are, what the unmet needs are, what does it really look like, what are some best practices, what are some lessons learned. And so these partnerships, I think, have been critical to allowing us to move the work forward and really strategically plan and get in community so that we make sure that we're relevant. Because it's great to have a campaign or a project, and we started as a project 5 years ago and we've grown as a campaign. It's great to offer service, but it's more important that community trust the services that we say we are going to provide. And we have landowners who are knocking the doors down, trying to get to us to help them provide those services. So I think the partnership and the connecting is very important. And so that's from partnership to community and the like that has been instrumental in us being able to do the work.
All right, Andrea, I'm getting ready to pass the offering plate in a minute. But before I do that, the word that you said, trust or trusted, and also the fact that sometimes heirs property owners not heirs property owners, but people who see or hear about heirs property, they only see it from that perspective of rural or are from African Americans. But we also see, though, that heirs property is in urban areas. It's prevalent among Native Americans. It's just called fractionated land. So heirs property, it really is about people just not having the access and go back to your word, trusted partners. Because we know from history has shown us that is why a lot of our landowners, they no longer own the land that was in their family for generations, because they trusted somebody just once, and that's all it took. So yes, that is key. So ladies, thank you for noting that clearing title is what allows landowners to access land use services. And now, Freddie, in your introduction, you gave us a brief overview of the services you offer landowners. But here's how I want you to look at that. If one of us were to accompany you on one of your visits with a landowner, what would we see? Provide us an example Help us understand.
Okay, you got your boots on. All right. So with one of the things that we'll do with landowners, we really like for landowners to accompany us on visits if possible and take a walk through the woods because a lot of times we're dealing with landowners that have not actually went out and viewed their property, look at the property lines, look at the corners. And we offer that safe environment, for those landowners to go out and actually look. And that seems it it, it seems kind of unreal that offering that opportunity, but because they own the land, but it's a real thing, going out and actually physically walking that property with landowners. So we'll walk the property with or without the landowners, and the foresters will make an assessment as they go. With that, the whole intent of that is to develop a plan for that landowner. And what that plan does is it outlines how that landowner will achieve their goals. And usually on our walk with that landowner, we discuss goals and we discuss what the intents of the property are. What are some of the things they look to achieve? Look at, and a lot of times that conversation goes, it doesn't even start in the woods or in the forest. That conversation, we're talking about life, major life events, things that's happening in the community, things that's happening in the state and in the county. And through that, we'll usually get an idea because a lot of times landowners do not know exactly where to start because they don't know what they don't know about forestry. So we'll go through and talk and get an understanding of what that landowner's interested in. And so we're looking at the resources that the landowner have. Then we're looking at the resources that the land has. And we're putting those two resources together to come up with a plan that will assist that landowner with reaching their goals and objective, for the property and within life. And from there, what we'll do is we'll come back with a handwritten plan with the schedule, and usually that schedule is about a 15-year schedule, because forestry, when you're in it for the long haul. And so we'll come out with like a 15-year schedule of events, and that those activities or events will be outlined as to when they need to happen, where the resources to assist them with making that happen. So it's really detailed, and it's interesting because usually I've had to do these presentations of these forest management plans with the next generation of the family. So it's a whole, okay, I understand it. Now I want you to explain it to the next generation. Um, and a lot of times these plans are actually put right into the estate plans. Like these are the plans that we're looking to move forward with on the property. Now, as opportunities come up, that plan's a living document, so it might change from time to time. So that's the plan is not the end all be all of our interaction with that landowner. However, it is probably one of the most important points, touch points that we have with the landowner. So we'll go through that, we'll walk them through, and then we'll touch back as because we've got a copy of that plan, so we're touching bases with that landowner at those key moments and saying, hey, here's, we've got a burning schedule. Did you sign up for this opportunity? Did you there's assistance with, there's a new program that's come out or that offers assistance with burning, and we noticed that you've got burning in there. One of the key things with this project is the marketing aspect. Along with the heirs property aspect is the marketing. And so we've been working with landowners. Um, Again, we've been working with landowners for a while, and forestry is not a short project. However, one of the things we've written plans in the past, and we've got landowners to a point, And usually it's time for harvest. At some point, it's time for a harvest. And we've been reaching those points. And we know how important the forestry is in the South. I outlined that before, and Jeannie outlined it. How those markets are key. However, it's a challenge for the landowners that we're working with to access those markets. And so this plan and this project is working together to service the need of those landowners. Um, and now the marketing piece is really key and critical, and that's the point, and that's why this project is really kind of hitting home for us, is that opportunity to access the markets with the partnerships that we have within the industry.
Right. I got a couple of follow-up questions, Freddie. How many of your landowners knew about USDA, and how many of them had ever accessed the programs of USDA?
So when we talk that knew about USDA programs, we're less than 15%
Okay.
of the landowners that knew about the assistance that's offered.
Mhm.
And we're even less than that on those landowners that's participated
Yeah.
in those programs.
And I'll follow up, and Frank, get ready. I'm coming to you. But the point about trust, the trust doesn't just need to be seen on the legal side, it also needs to be seen or experienced on the forestry or the land management side. Um, I remember when Chip first started its sustainable forestry program, actually, Freddie, only one out of the 87 of our landowners had ever heard of USDA. But it was that point of they would tell our forester, oh, I own 5 acres, right? Then a little further down the road, they tell the forester, oh, but I actually own 20 acres down the road, because they wanted to see, could I trust you before I share with you what I actually own? So I just wanted to add at that point. Frank, are you ready for me? Um, Winston County Self Help has been working with heirs property owners for years. And what barriers did you encounter before the partnership? And how has the broader partnership with CHIP and MCJ strengthened what you can offer your landowners?
Yes, Jenny. In my infancy stages of working with the Wisconsin Self-Help Cooperative, the barrier that we faced, that we had the lack of legal services, then access to other services that Fred had stated, whether it's through USDA or through extension. Moving into this partnership, we have been able to have more accessibility to education and legal assistance to help people maintain the ownership of the property. But going back to one of the other issues when Fred was talking about walking with individuals on the land, one thing that we do extensively is to check to ensure who are these people and what are their role in this process. Because sometimes you wasting energy and time because these people are not relevant to this situation. So the first thing that I do, is pull up a map, and then I'm going to validate it by checking with the uh, circuit clerk to find out who are these people, and to ensure that we're working with a core group of people to get this work actually done. And then there's been time that we'll work with people, and they may be third, fourth, fifth generation. They have no interest in the property as of yet. They're going to inherit the interest, but you got to have the people who actually have the interest presently to get this work done. So you work through those barriers and you build a relationship with people, and that relationship is what help sell the project forward once you build that. And just knowing who the players are, whether it's state, whether it's other community-based organization, you have to work from within that frame to convey what is needed for these people to maintain ownership of their natural resources.
It's interesting that the forester or the land management person told us this is the one thing that you need to know when it's heirs property. Are you an heir?
Yeah, yeah,
That is key. That is key. So, Duran, are you
absolutely.
ready? It is. I won't tell my story because we don't have enough time. Duran, are you ready? Um, Share with us, how, give us your before and after. Before this initiative and after in the partnerships, and what difference has it made for you?
Well, we went the first decade or so of our work, as I mentioned earlier, working with landowners that had clear title. And through that work, we began to realize that there were landowners that didn't have clear title and they were locked out from having services, performed on their property. So the partnership essentially gave us another tool to be able to help landowners manage and steward, their property. One of the things that, we see if you were going to come out on the walk with us is a lot of land that hasn't been managed, land that's undermanaged, and land that has a bunch of potential but needs a lot of things in order to be able to get to that point where those landowners can pass on something to their children that still has value, that still has worth. Because if it's worth something, people are more inclined to keep it, right? And being able to work with LSA, one of the biggest benefits that we've had with working with CHIP and LSA is to be able to inform and educate landowners. Some of y'all found out about heirs property years ago. I just learned about it, like in 2023, right? So I mean, one of the needs that we had was really to be able to reach people and to express to them what heirs property is. Of course, you have landowners still in Alabama that have heirs property, but they don't know that they've got heirs property. So that's one of the afters, and one of the, it made us more efficient and it made us more effective in the work that we're already doing.
Thank you. From what we've seen is sometimes when you ask folk, do they have heirs property? They're like, no, I don't have heirs property. This is my family land. And then when you start having that conversation, yeah, it's family land, but it's family land with a little more attached to it. That's going to take you a while to get to it. So thank you. Um, this has been so great. I got to stay focused though. So with CHIP, we have both our legal services and our land use services under one roof. But what is unique is that you all have learned, and for those who weren't on earlier, I admitted that I am an only child. So for those of you, the point that sometimes it's really hard for organizations to collaborate, right? And so it appears that you guys have done it, you've learned it. So just talk to me a little bit about you've talked about your experience, you've talked about how you've made a difference, and we've also looked at the accomplishments that has happened. Sorry, can't even talk today. Um, so MCJ, could you do me a favor? Can you describe how the referral system works for you?
Okay.
From the
Thanks.
legal perspective, of course.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jenny. So in terms of our referral system, we have partnered with this initiative, the Mobile Basin Initiative, Heirs Property Initiative, with the Winston County Self-Help Cooperative and the Mississippi Association of Cooperatives. And one of the things I think that sets MAC and Winston County Self-Help apart is that they're both very real connected and respected in this area. And so I think because they are both well connected and respected in this area as it relates to heirs property and ag, they're able to get bodies or people in the room, right? Landowners in the room who are interested in learning and hearing, what we have to say. I think too, because of there's a mutual respect amongst the partners that is there, that we recognize and understand each other's lane, and we can appreciate like what that looks like and how we all work to put the pieces of the puzzle together And so we're able to then, I think, collectively work for the ultimate goal of, at the end of the day, yes, heirs property may stand in the gap to provide access to the courts and and clear that title. So then Winston County or MAC can take the baton and take the landowner even further on the continuum, right? Of how do we help or assist landowners and leave them better than we found them? How do we help them unlock the wealth that is in the land? And so with the partnership or the referral systems that we have in place, it helps us do that. So from the legal perspective, what that looks like is this. We've been able to partner with both MAC and Winston County to host outreach and education, like joint programming. And so that may be on the educational piece of heirs property, what it is, right? Because there's so many myths, estate planning, life planning, what that looks like. And then even mobile wills clinics, like getting into communities and talking about how do we avoid the creation of heirs property. And then in those instances where people who may not have per se heirs property then automatically connect them to MAC in Winston County in reference to the land use side of it. But in terms of the referral system, it typically is a direct referral. So oftentimes people may call by phone. It may be verbal. You're out in an outreach event, and they're like, "Hey, I have this person, Ms. Barnes, right?" And so we're able to kind of talk it out and talk it through about that landowner. And a lot of times it's email. And so we have a referral form where we're able to, refer those where MAC and Winston County are able to refer those persons who have heirs property and are in need of direct legal assistance to MCJ. And then MCJ then in turn has dedicated staff that's going to assist the landowner once the referral is made. Typically, MAC and Winston County are very good with providing this kind of summation of facts or giving us the skinny, so to speak, in terms of where the landowner is, what the issues as they understand them are. And then we're able to do conduct intake with the landowner to make a determination of whether they meet our service qualifications and what assistance, if any, we're able to provide. So because I think of the mutual respect of all the parties collectively working together, then we're able to reach more people and more landowners, and we're able to offer some really good services.
Thank you. And it also means you're maximizing resources because you're not all doing these things separately. So
yeah.
LR Lean, Duran, can you describe how the referral system works from the land use perspective?
It works a lot of the same way. One of the things that I learned in this process, since I just recently learned about heirs property, one of the things that I learned is that it can take a lot of years to resolve, title on a particular piece of property. Well, guess what? The land doesn't wait. While you're, working in the court system and working through the tax office and doing all that stuff, somebody needs to actually visit the property, because a landowner can start with one piece of property, and by the time the legal process takes place, they've got completely different conditions out there, whether it's insects and diseases, whether it's trees that need to be thinned. All those things happen in a range where it's important for you to be able to get out there. So one of the things that work that we do with one another is stay in contact with each other, have a clear communication with each other, so that if Mr. Peterson needs somebody to go out there and look at the property while he's got other legal things going on, we can go out there and look at the property, maybe make a management plan for them, so that they know exactly what needs to take place while they're working through the legal process.
Okay, thank you. Farah, can you talk about your relationship with LR Lean? How has it helped you connect more with the landowners or the people in the community?
Yeah, definitely. We are very fortunate to have a great partnership with LR Lean, and we've been able to do a lot of joint outreach events. So as I talked about before, heirs property is a relatively new area that we've gotten back into at LSA in the past couple of years. So working with LR Lean has been really helpful. We've done a lot of joint outreach events, kind of similar to what Andrea had mentioned about that they've done in Mississippi. So by doing those events together, we are able to be more integrated in the communities, reach more landowners, and like both Duran and Andrea have mentioned, The two services really do work well hand in hand. We can work on, the legal side, trying to clear title, and then our forestry partners can work on trying to help the family monetize the land in the long run. So the two services work really well. It's really helped us to expand our reach to communities, where we either didn't have as much of a presence or the community may not know that LSA was doing heirs property work. So that's been really helpful, and will hopefully continue to be. So, yeah.
Okay. Freddie, tell us how you're building off the strength of your partners. What is it that how do you, here's one thing Andrea said that stuck with me, and it's her point about stay in your lane, because it is very key that one, farce does not practice law without a license, right? And that the legal folk don't try to tell families how to plant trees. But can you tell me a little bit about how, how were you able to build off each other's strengths?
I think the credibility was mentioned earlier in this presentation, and I think it's been mentioned several times. But when we go out and have that walk through the woods or that conversation with the landowner, and more times than not, heirs property is going to come up, whether they understood it before the walk or as a product of the walk, they understand that they've got heirs property. But having that partnership where you can then refer that landowner to a resource that can start addressing those needs as well as the needs that they have, that's key. That's gaining that, well, I came here for this, but I'm getting this and that builds that trust with that landowner and gives that credibility to the organization, and then that's when you start seeing community coming to you and saying, hey, I understand what's happened over here
Right.
with landowner X, and we didn't know that was something, and it could go vice versa, forestry referrals or referrals to the legal side. But that's one of the things I think when we're able to address all of the holistically the concerns of landowners, it give us more credibility, and just having that tool in the toolbox helps.
Def Definitely. Um, you all have heard about all this great work that has been going on, and just let me share with you some of the accomplishments that have happened over the last 15 to 20 months, um, with funding from both the Farm Service Agency of USDA as well as WWF. So despite the disruptions that we've had, our programs have provided more than 400 free legal consultations, and they've advised more than 120 landowners to direct legal services. These aren't people who just sat down and they got up and they didn't understand what their options were. No. Even if they didn't get the direct legal services, they have what we call their resolution checklist or plan about how to move forward. Then we had, which is, I was referring to the title resolution plans, and almost 400 of those were developed. And this is unique. They resolved 35 titles. You've heard Duran and other folks say that's not always easy. The average could be 2 years or it could be 5, 7. It just depends upon the relationship of the family. 140 wills were drafted, and that is to prevent, the future fragmentation. We were talking about that. They've supported 80 new farming enterprises. 42 of those were new, right? They help 107 producers obtain USDA farm numbers. They help producers apply to cost share programs and loan programs. So these individuals, if they had not had access to any of these folk that we're taught who are on the panel, they may not have been able to get these services. Um, Last but not least, and then if you combine the total of the acres that are involved, it's almost 33,000 acres, right? That's not something that you sneeze at. That is significant over 15 to 20 months. And this is just the early stages, right? Can you imagine what it would have been if we were able to continue with the grant from the FSA, the Farm Service Agency? So I'm going to ask that question. Frank, I'll start with you. How has the loss of federal funding impacted not only the landowner, but also the organization? We're going to combine since we're almost running out of time.
So, Jenny, the loss of funding has one minimized the, I guess, the visibility of where we were to where we're trying to move forward to. Uh, the Wisconsin Self-Help, we have a broad network, and we believe in working with people directly. And we have another circuit that we want to expand into. And now that the loss of services, we may not get the opportunity to fully impact these individuals because they need these services and we're limited on funding. So I think that's going to be probably the most impactful part. Those individuals who never had any services, period, may not get services in time because they was already in limbo. And so now it's going to be very impactful, I would say the least.
Thank you. Farah, tell us a little bit of how I'm trying to be politically right. This issue has impacted your landowners and your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as I might have mentioned or alluded to in my introduction, so we are a nonprofit law firm and we're grant funded. About 70 or 80% of our funding is federal. So basically every attorney that we have is funded by a grant. We used our grant from CHIP, the Farm Service grant, to fund an attorney's salary. And unfortunately, we did have to let that attorney go. We just don't have any additional funding to keep anyone on. Typically our most of our federal funding stays about level. Under the current administration, we are basically under threats every year to be defunded. This past year, we received about a 3% budget cut. We always like a small increase or level, but we actually got a small cut. So unfortunately, this year we were just not able to, we didn't have any additional funding to sustain that attorney's salary. And when we do receive grants, most of our budget goes to personnel. So like I said, all of our attorneys are funded by a particular grant. So unfortunately, we've already lost that attorney. I started off in my intro, or at some point today, I mentioned when we had our fully staffed Heirs Property team, we had 3 attorneys and 2 paralegals. So we're down to 2 attorneys for the entire state. There are many landowners out there that need help.
Right.
And with one less person, we just will not be able to do as much work. But there is certainly still that demand. So that's the immediate impact, certainly, that losing that grant has had on our operations. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Andrea?
Thank you, Jenny. So like Farah mentioned, MCJ2 is also a nonprofit organization, and we receive grant funding to support the work of the Heirs Property campaign. Actually, right before we received the notice of cancellation of the Farm Service Award, we were on the cusp of preparing to hire another attorney with specialized knowledge to assist us with this work. And so, of course, once we received notice of the cancellation, our hiring is now on hold, and we're unable to hire another attorney. And so what does that look like in real time? Well, we're unable to assist more landowners with filing those direct legal actions, with going out and doing outreach and education and educating community, and drafting those, those wills to prevent the creation of heirs property. What does that look like, I guess, in terms of not only the reduction in human capital, but even on professional development? Like there was, money to help further develop the skills, right, of our lawyers. And so, that resources is gone. In addition to, I think, the funding courts, the cuts in terms of organizational or operational infrastructure There were monies in there to pay for occupancy, right? We had grown, my
Yeah.
team had grown, and we're in a separate space now, right? And so money, was set aside in terms of those expenses to be able to cover or support us in our office. And so, with the reduction in with the cancellation of funding, that substantially, adversely impacts us, right? As an organization, it adversely impacts landowners. One of the things, we've not had to cut any staff. And so we've been blessed to be able to hold on to the staff that we have. But in the FSA grant, for example, there were four, additional new team members that were brought in to help support the work, right? And so but we're looking at sustainability, because as an organization, general operations is kind of holding us together. But that can only hold us for so long. And so as we look to, like, well, what does that look like? How are we going to navigate? Then, that may look like, from maybe, instead of having to let staff go or lay off staff, that may look like going to part-time versus, full-time. That may look like dividing up maybe responsibilities amongst team members that we're able to keep based upon other grant funding, which then may ultimately lead to fatigue or burnout, right? Because this work it's time consuming work, because we're real people helping real people, right? And so we're in the trenches with these families, and we're walking alongside the families. And so in terms of these layoffs, these are areas where we've been able to see where the need is. One of the things we're creatively kind of thinking about is virtual, maybe, limiting the number of outreach that we actually host. But if we're going to host outreach, maybe doing some virtual versus in person. And so we're just having to creatively think outside the box in an effort to continue to do the work.
Right. Thank you. Deron?
One area that I didn't hear anyone mention, but Freddie kind of alluded to it earlier, was this issue of trust, right?
Uh-oh. Did Deron freeze?
Oh no. Right at the time, the perfect moment. Oh,
Yeah. I'm going to come back to Deron. Freddie.
Yeah, for sure. When we talk through the whole planning process and talk through forestry and all of these opportunities cannot be realized, or very hard to be realized, without a market. Woo. Um, and so I don't know if y'all heard that or not, but it is
What, it
cutting
was
up
lightning?
outside.
There
Yeah.
was lightning? Okay.
so the access to market was really where that funding was allowing us to concentrate, was on the marketing, a lot of marketing aspect. And so we're having to pivot, and we're going to have to reduce our efforts at market access and assisting landowners with that process. So that's a critical point, because we've got landowners all the way up to the point where, hey, it's time to access market, and working on that access to land. The intent of that was around market access. So we're gonna our ability to scale up on that particular need is going to be really reduced by lack of reduction in funding.
Okay. Has Deron, thank you, Freddie. Has Deron been able to come back on?
Yeah, I'm back on.
Okay. All right.
I don't trust my internet. It's the main thing. But the issue is, again, it's trust. I mean, the reason why we're effective is because we've built relationships with landowners. And every time that you have a cut and you have to let somebody, go, and we have to bring another person in to this family who already doesn't really trust the system, to begin with, it just
Yep.
delays progress, right? And these people are vulnerable. They're in a condition where they want stability in the people who they serve, right? I mean, I could imagine. I'm not an attorney, but I could imagine, as an attorney, having a relationship with your clients is extremely important, And if you don't have the funds to be able to be stable in that community, it just goes back to credibility again. It just it seems like, okay, well, here you are, such so and so was here before. Now we got somebody else, and then it like undervalues the landowners that we're trying to serve as well. So I mean, it's you know, along with all of the things that everyone else said, I mean, it's kind of like continually having to start over from scratch every single time you get one of these, budget cuts, and we end up having to reduce services to landowners who need them the most. And especially, I think if everybody can remember back to that time, we were gaining speed, right? We were gaining momentum. We were ready to jump out there and do big things, right? And it kind of just, it didn't stop the process, but it slowed down some of the tools that we were going to use.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. As we come to a close, I want to name the resilience you heard throughout this conversation. Federal funding cuts are real, and they have real consequences for these organizations, their staff, and the landowners waiting for their help. But the work doesn't stop because federal funding has been cut. These partners still have a mission. They continue walking with landowners, making referrals, connecting legal and land use services, and helping families protect their homes, their land, and their legacy. At the same time, resilience is not the same as having enough resources. The fact that partners keep going does not mean the need has disappeared. It means the commitment is deep. Is really what it means. That is why philanthropic support remains essential. It helps sustain the trusted relationships, staff capacity, and coordinated services that make this work possible. My hope is that funders leave today understanding that this is not a moment to step back, it is a moment to lean in. And I'll say thank you to each of our partners for sharing the work so clearly and for keeping the landowners at the center of this conversation. And thank you to SAFSF for creating this space and having Chip and our partners. Masika, I will turn it back to you for Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Stevens. Thank you, Andrea, Freddie, Frank, Deron, Farah. Thank you so much. It's such a rich conversation, and just appreciate you being here. And I'm thinking about this too. I really wanted to shout out Freddie and Deron for being here with us in the virtual space when you're used to being out walking the land with people. I wish I could walk with you. I love to be out there. I like being there more than I do in the virtual space. But thank you so much for doing that, because I know that's not always easy to transition into this space. So we do have about 15 minutes left for Q&A. We did get one question so far in the chat, and I want to actually, Alan, if you are willing to come off mute, if you want to ask your question, I would be welcome to that. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. I can also do it, but please, if you'd like to.
Sure. Thank you. This has been an amazing experience to learn about this network. Each of your organizations on the ground, in the mud, in the needles of the trees. I love the forest myself. And so it seems like you have the tools and the networks and the trust model that could be expanded, and it's slowing down the decay of ownership. But what would really slow it down? And so my question is, what would a moonshot look like for preventative initiatives to scale up this awareness and title transfer with both government, corporate donations, and philanthropy? But I heard Kimberly Clark mentioned, and I bet they're a pretty big gun, as well as World Wildlife Foundation. And then related to that, who would coordinate that? And would it be a coalition of groups and agencies like yourselves? That seems like that would be the best way to support it. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alan.
Danielle, do you want to jump in and respond a little bit? But I don't want to slight our panelists either. But go ahead.
I'll say a little bit and then pass it over to the rest of you. Hi, Danielle O'Hara, Chief Partnerships Officer. And so, Alan, what you just laid out is what we have in the Mobile Basin Heirs Property Initiative. So the initiative started back in 2021, as a partnership between the World Wildlife Fund, Kimberly-Clark, and Center for Heirs Property. And we brought in Mississippi Center for Justice because WWF wanted to work in the Mobile Basin, Mississippi and Alabama, and Center for Heirs Property didn't work there. We're in South Carolina. And so that was our first opportunity to begin sharing our model outside of South Carolina. Fast forward to present, we've been able to expand to Alabama and include all of the partners that you see today. And we see ourselves as a coalition. We also have included another corporate partner, International Paper. And so our implementation partner, who you've been hearing from today, our partner with World Wildlife Fund, and our corporate partners form the Mobile Basin Heirs Property Initiative Coalition. We meet quarterly. We just had our quarterly meeting last Wednesday, just to stay on top of things together. We are involved in a couple of different sub initiatives. You heard Freddie Davis talk a lot about markets and the importance of markets. One of the great opportunities we have in partnering with corporations is helping them think about how they change procurement practices so that the landowners we serve might get a piece of that pie. And so we've got a special initiative that is focused on procurement. Yeah, and the corporate partners right now are funding the Mobile Basin Heirs Property Initiative and really kind of thinking about ways to make that funding sustainable, and possibly bring in other corporate partners. Everyone on the panel is part of the Mobile Basin Heirs Property Initiative, so just kind of want to invite you all to add.
Thanks for bringing me up to speed.
Well, I'd also add, not only are we working with organizations in Mississippi and Alabama, we also have partners in Kentucky, West Virginia, and East Texas, and Arkansas, because it is really about building the infrastructure. My joke is always, we're going to take over the world. We'd love to be able to do that. And like, there wouldn't be no heirs property, but that unfortunately is not where we are. We're also convening folk next month and having a conversation about a national heirs property alliance. So to answer your question, Alan, yeah, we have big dreams. We know where we want to go. It's just that we need supporters. That's what we need. Anybody else on the panel want to answer or respond to Alan's question?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do real quick. With me probably being the only baby boomer on this, yeah, I think it's imperative that I want to see before the end of my tenure for this what we're doing now to continue because it's pertinent. I'm with people every day that are transitioning, and I want us to be able to secure the land that does remain, that's heirs property, and in other issues that we can eliminate. We must have some type of system for us to move this forward and save rural America.
That was almost a political speech right there, Frank.
No.
I actually wanted to ask more about this national heirs property meaning. If there's any more information you could share about that, I'm really curious about that and happy to hear that that's happening.
Danielle, you want to?
Sure. Yeah. So it's funny that Jenny passes it to me because Jenny has been thinking about the National Heirs Property Alliance for years.
I'm trying to stay in my lane.
But I am the Chief Partnerships Officer, so I will talk about it. Yeah, so, kind of had started as, just kind of a concept in Jenny's mind, knowing that this is something that is national. Like we've said, we've been talking about the mobile basin, but heirs property is an issue that is experienced throughout the country by all types of communities. And in the last few years, awareness has been raising about heirs property, and there are many, many new players in the field of heirs property. And like Jenny said, one of the things that we take really seriously as a leader in this area is helping to build the infrastructure, helping to build the field so that we are all moving together in the right direction. And one step towards that would be a National Heirs Property Alliance to kind of help us all. At the moment, there are no standards and practices for heirs property. Like everyone's out there just kind of doing their thing. But as a community, we would like to see us create those together. So that's one thing that a National Heirs Property Alliance might do. Another might be to do collective policy work together on a federal level. We see the National Heirs Property Alliance as a big tent. You know, obviously, attorneys are very important to moving heirs property work forward, but you've heard today that land use professionals are also very important. Heirs property is something that happens in an urban context, and so we need housing professionals at the table. We need title folks. We need appraisal folks. It's a big tent, and we want everyone to come under it to have this conversation. And so we have been working with a couple of consultants for the last year and a half to explore the need. Is there a need? Do people want a National Heirs Property Alliance? The response has been resoundingly yes. Once we got that information back, our consultants have been about trying to determine what would be the appropriate structure for a National Heirs Property Alliance. We know that it will be a separate organization, but it will start as kind of a little brother, little sister of the Center for Heirs Property. We'll walk along with it until it launches into an independent organization, and it needs to be its own organization. And so this meeting in June, it's June 18th, will be to bring folks together to talk about the journey that we've been on with the National Heirs Property Alliance, just kind of doing this groundwork. And out of it, an outcome will be an advisory committee. It doesn't need to be CHIP that creates this. It needs to be an advisory committee of folks in the community that kind of move forward with creating this structure. So stay tuned. But like that, the June 18th will be our first step.
I love that too. It's just making me think about, how we're thinking about the upcoming forum, and again, being in the South, and the South as like a blueprint. The work that you all are doing and others in the South as that blueprint. So that's what I'm hearing here about this summit is kind of what that is, to help spread that around. That's great. Appreciate that. Um, we have 5 minutes. Is there anyone else that has any questions for our awesome panel? Or I don't know if there's any questions actually among those of you on the panel, for each other, or any also just kind of last words or things that you want to share. Floor is open. Anybody can come off mute too. I'm totally fine with that.
I just want to share that Freddie lost power, and so unfortunately, we probably
No,
won't have him for the
Freddie.
last couple of minutes. Andrea
I
also is experiencing huge storms. Frank also might be.
I guess yes, that's right. We heard that lightning earlier, so yeah.
But at least it held off until we finished. So, right?
Yeah, I know. Appreciate that.
If my internet connection will last long enough for me to say so, I just want to be able to say the honor that it's been to work with the Center for Heirs Property, to work with Danielle, to work with Dr. Stevens, and the introduction that they've given our organizations to folks like Attorney Barnes and Legal Services of Alabama and other individuals. There aren't enough people helping people, right? So when you have organization like this that's like not just talking about it, they're being about it, and actually going out and helping. I'm honored to be a part of that work, and I just want to thank y'all for what you've done with LR Lean and for LR Lean over the years.
It's been a pleasure being your partner also, Deron. Freddie's back. Any last words, Freddie?
Want Freddie to close that window.
I lost power there.
Yeah, looks like you did.
Pouring
I was
down.
worried.
No, I just it's pretty cool to get on and hear everybody's story, like as if we all not working together. It's like, whoa. So this has been really inspiring. More than anything else, I know to some it's been informing, but it's been really inspiring to kind of get together and hear, all that we're doing, and really I'm thankful for the opportunity to share, what it is that we're doing, with a group that I was looking at the list of those that's in attendance, and I think it seems to be a group um, that's really in this space and understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. So it's been inspiring.
I'll just share a few last words before we end. I too say ditto to what Deron and Freddie have said, just in terms of being in the space, being in the room. I think as servant leaders, doing the work, working in community, working with people, I truly believe that we've been stronger together. And I think I too am very appreciative of Chip. I tell Jenny all the time, Dr. Stevens, Chip is family. Or whatever. I consider you family in addition to the other partners that we have. I think it's just a testament, I think, to great leadership and the ability to lean in and support one another as we walk through assisting landowners in our respective areas and our respective states. So thank you again to Chip, WWF, and all of our partners, and of course SAF.
You got it. SAFSF. Great. That's wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Farah, did you have anything you want to?
I don't know that I can
Don't
add
worry, got a
anything
minute.
beyond what my colleagues have said, other than just to say that, yeah, certainly we appreciate all of your time today. Certainly appreciate Center for Heirs Property and the partnership that they provided, as well as all of our partners. I've talked about how important this work is. Here at Legal Services, we have more clients than we know what to help with, but I think this is one of the areas where we really can have a lasting impact on families and allow them to really build generational wealth. And so I'm glad that we get to do this work, and certainly appreciative of all of your time today and letting us talk with you all about that. So thank you all.
Love that. Thank you. On that note, thank you so much again to all of you. Really appreciate this. Thanks for everybody for attending and for being engaged for an hour and a half in a virtual space. Not always easy, but this was such a great and engaging conversation. So really appreciate it. We will be sharing out the recording with you all as well. So you'll get to revisit this conversation. And I hope that this is kind of like maybe a start to like create more space for collaboration and partnership. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate this. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Likewise.
Thanks, everyone.